right about now you'll see a lot of videos promoting autumn reads that are all pumpkin spice and Gilmore Girls. Now, while there is nothing wrong with those things, I think that autumn reading is much more than that. So I tried to make the ultimate autumn reading guide across all of the genres. Yes, I even included romance. Although my choices there might not be the books that you're expecting. I truly believe there is something for everyone in this list. The links are in the description, you know how this works. Let's get ready for sweater weather. Let's kick off with literary fiction, and why not, let's make it a Japanese autumn. First one up is the Komegawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. And do be warned, this book will make you hungry. As autumn arrives in Japan, this book is all about the search for the memories and sometimes the melancholy that is deeply connected to food. It might be that favorite dish your mom made, or perhaps the one thing that you ordered at the first date with the love of your life. Food are like memories, they tend to fade, but that's where the Komegawa detectives come in. They try to recreate the exact dish and the memories that go along with it, and it makes for some really wholesome, hungry and cozy reading. This book is for people who liked Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. This book is for people who are looking for that touch of melancholy. It is not something I would recommend to people who are looking for a lot of plot or story. It does tend to get a kind of repetitive sometimes, but that doesn't take away from the whole ambience and the whole setting of a Japanese autumn. Yes, it is absolutely a book for foodies, and it will get you hungry. The Komegawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. The second one in this series is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Ogawa. And this is a sad tale. The professor in this story has suffered a head injury and only has an 87-minute memory. So every morning again he needs to be introduced to his housekeeper. He simply can't remember her anymore. What he does remember, however, are very clever mathematical puzzles and equations and things that he still remembers from his academic career, and he plays with them. Now these equations and this strange memory-riddled mind that the professor has does create a whole new world for three people. The professor, the housekeeper and her 10-year-old son. And they bond over it, and it is a beautiful story, but it is also a sad story. I would definitely recommend this book to someone who wants to experience all the feels, maybe read on a rainy, gloomy day and still walk away from it all warm and fuzzy inside. Now again, I would not recommend this one to people who want a lot of plot. This is mainly character focused, and I wouldn't recommend it to people who expect a lot of world building. This is a very closed-in little story, which makes it ideal for a reading afternoon. The Housekeeper and the Professor by Ogawa, the second one in our literary fiction series. The last one I'm going to pitch in this series is How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. Now, this book is best described as a match between a Studio Ghibli movie and Sophie's World. And this book is all about our young hero Copper, a young boy who tries to find his way in life, in high school, and he has to do without his dad. Now his uncle luckily is the one that guides him on this path, and they converse about very simple things and the very big questions. Now while this book indeed will talk about Copernicus and Newton, it never does so in that school teacher-like, almost preachy way that Sophie's World sometimes does. Instead, the lessons in this one are sometimes deceptively simple. And that in itself shows a true master at work. I would recommend this one to someone who is looking for a good coming-of-age story. Perhaps someone who wants their stories to be thought-provoking. If you, however, hate kids acting their age, then by all means stay away from this one. It is a lovely story, it is an inspiring story, but it still is a book about a childhood. How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. Then let's tackle, why not, horror? Because after all, fall is Halloween season. Now I'm not going to go into the really spooky, really unsettling, gory novels here. There will be a Halloween video coming on that topic, but let's pitch the good old ghost stories around the campsite. And the first one is The Dead of Winter. The Dead of Winter is a collection of 10 short stories that are all about ghosts and haunting and the macabre. All of these stories come from different authors, some are lesser known, but some very well-known names as well. So Arthur Conan Doyle, Ruth Rendell, and so on. And these are just classic tales for chilling nights. A good old ghost story for when the daylight is dying. I would recommend this one to you if you loved telling ghost stories around a campfire or with a torch under your face, then this book is absolutely for you. If you are, however, a hardcore horror reader and you want things to be bloody and gory and really spooky and scary, then you might not want to pick this one up. Dead of Winter, a collection of spooky short stories. Speaking about spooky ghost stories, We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Of course, I mean, this is such a classic. It is a story of a strange, peculiar girl, Mary Cat, and their even stranger family. They all have their almost Adam families like darker secrets and their quirks and their strange little personalities. And all of this is thrown into the mix when a visitor arrives. It is bizarre, it is strange, it is haunting, and I absolutely love it. I would recommend this one to people that are looking more for the things that you don't see than the things that you will see. This is more for a theater of mind kind of horror than what you actually experience and read. This is not for people who want their horror books to be show and tell. This is not a book for you if you expect a book full of monsters and gore, although the next one might just be that. Because our third book in the horror category is The Book of Lost Things by John Connoly. This is a story about a young boy, David. His mother has recently passed, his family is falling apart around him, and he takes refuge, he shelters in his books and his imagination. Now, when reality and imagination start to blur and start to merge with one another, David is teleported into this world of fairy tales. Yes, these are the fairy tales that we all know and love, but with a much darker and gory fate. These are not your they lived happily ever after stories. No. These stories tend to go a bit wrong. And the Book of Lost Things is a bit of a deceptive book. You might think that this is a YA book and it has lots of the features that you would expect from an YA book, but trust me, this is an adult fantasy / horror book that goes into some really dark places. This book is for someone who likes his folklore and his fairy tales. This book is for someone who likes things to be a bit more gothic and dark and gloomy. I would not recommend this one to people who are looking for a classical fantasy book. There are some better retellings of classical fairy tales than this one. No, this one is a book that goes psychological. The Book of Lost Things by John Connoly, the third and last book in our horror category. And of course we're doing a murder mystery. There is something about autumn that screams just sitting back and solving a murder. And of course we are going to kick off with the Queen of Crime herself, Agatha Christie, and this new collection which is called Autumn Chills. Now Autumn Chills are previously printed Agatha Christie stories, but they all seem to share a bit more supernatural and an autumny theme. There is Poirot, there is Miss Marple, there are some other detectives, there are some really well-known stories like Murder on the Mews and others that you might never have heard of before. And this one is all secluded cottages and spooky mansions, haunted ruins, you name it, this collection has it. I would recommend this one to people who have not read a lot of short stories by Agatha Christie. I would recommend it to someone who is looking for a quick read, a satisfying read. I would not recommend this one to people that prefer the Agatha Christie without the occult and the supernatural. The shadows grow longer, the days go shorter. Autumn Chills by Agatha Christie. Then we have A Great Deliverance, which is the first book in the Inspector Linley mystery series by Elizabeth George. And the story, the background story of this one alone is just made for a spooky, mysterious, gloomy autumn read. This is a story of a small secluded Yorkshire village and its terrible history. When Cromwell's raiders came knocking and were searching for people to take away, the villagers were hiding somewhere, and one of the babies they had with them was almost about to cry out. Now, out of fear of almost being discovered, they throttled the child. And this, many centuries after, is the premises, the setting of this Inspector Linley mystery. There has been a savage murder, a woman is found in her best dress with an axe on her lap and a little note. I did it and I'm not sorry. This one is a book for people who are looking for both a murder mystery and a thriller. This one is a book I would recommend to people who are looking for village gossip and scandals and everyone having a dark past. I would not recommend this one if you're not into history, or if you're not keen on there being historical notes in your book. No, this one deeply taps into that. A truly chilling mystery, A Great Deliverance by Elizabeth George. And as our third book, we have The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. And this one is all about a book in a book. When editor Susan receives the latest manuscript of one of her best-selling crime writers, she just starts to read as she always does. And it is a story with the classics. There are bodies, there are witnesses, there is a detective, and there are a lot of suspects. But as she continues to read through the story and this manuscript, she starts to discover that there is a story within the story. Like if there was a secret message lying underneath. A message of ambition, jealousy, and greed. I would definitely recommend this one to you if you like your murder mysteries to be a bit more dark and gloomy. This one is for you if you're looking for a page turner that will keep you on the edge of your seat. I would not recommend this one to you if you are looking for a story that you can solve on your own. This one is very clever, it is very masterfully written, and might very well not be your cup of tea. However, if that sounds like a bonus to you, then you'll have a great time with the Magpie Murders. Now, I do hope you're enjoying this list, and if you are, do leave a like. Now, this list is far from finished, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of this video. Onwards to fantasy, and we're going to kick off with a classic YA. The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud is the first book in the Lockwood & Ghost series. Ghosts are back, and there are a lot of these detective agencies for paranormal activity. We meet Lucy Carlyle, who is a very promising agent, but she ends up with one of the smaller, a bit ramshackle agencies, Lockwood & Co. And from there on, it's one haunted house after another. I would definitely recommend this one if you love the TV series. I would recommend this one if you want some YA in your fantasy. I would definitely not recommend this one to you if you hate young people. I mean, these are teenagers and they will do what teenagers do while hunting ghosts. The Screaming Staircase and the whole Lockwood & Co series by Jonathan Stroud for a more lighter, urban fantasy kind of YA touch. The next one is a mix of historical fiction, fantasy and even romance. It is The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. We meet a young woman in the 18th century France, and in a moment of despair she makes this deal with the devil and she becomes immortal. Now, while she will indeed live forever, she is cursed by the fact that people will always forget her. From the moment they don't see her anymore, people will just have forgotten about her, which makes her almost invisible. Now, we will follow her across a span of 300 years and we will see the world change around her. There will be all kinds of historical facts and people until the day that she meets a young man in a bookstore and he remembers her name. I would recommend this one to people who are looking for romantasy without wanting to look for romantasy. I would definitely recommend this one if you want to feel all of the emotions and if you want your heart shattered. I would definitely recommend this one if you love a mix of historical fiction and fantasy. I would not recommend this one to you if you like your fantasy books to have a lot of plot. I would stay away if you are allergic to romantasy and there being a very deep romantic connection in the story, and I would definitely not recommend it if you want your fantasy books to have all of the swords and dragons and magic. The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And then as our third and last book in the fantasy series, I would go for The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, the first in the King Killer series. This is a story of a young man, Kvote, who tells all about his life and his own journey from being a young kid in a crime-riddled city when he suddenly discovers that he's magically gifted, how he gets into the magic school, and how he ends up killing the king. And this book does possess that quality that a good fantasy book should. It is capable of just sweeping you off your feet and transporting you to other worlds, other realities, and just have you stay there for hours and hours and hours on end. This is what epic fantasy, what high fantasy should be, and I absolutely recommend it to anyone who is looking for a thrilling ride with lots of action, good world building, and a very good story. This one is for you if you want your books to be a bit more poetical and well written and actually masterfully crafted. I would not recommend this one to you if you're not a fan of a first person point of view, and I would stay away from it if you're allergic to unreliable narrators. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And then let's indeed do Cosy, and I will kick off here with The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. The Graveyard Book is a story about Bud, who is a young boy whose family was murdered and he lives on a graveyard. Now, having grown up there, he can easily see all of the ghosts and specters, he can talk to the ghouls, and they have indeed taken him up as their family member and raised him. And this is a very cozy, very wholesome, warm-feeling story about found family. Yes, it is strange, yes, it is quirky, after all, it is a Neil Gaiman book, but it is ever so cozy. I would recommend this one to you if you're a fan of A Nightmare Before Christmas. This one is for you if you're a fan of a loving but very dysfunctional family. I would not go near this book if you're looking for a very serious story, and I would stay away from this one if you're looking for a really adult book. Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Then something completely different but equally cozy, we have An Old-Fashioned Thanksgiving by Louisa May Alcott. Yes, the same author of Little Women. And this is the story of a very classic old-fashioned Thanksgiving with the Bassett family. The only thing that's different this year is that the children are left in charge of the whole meal and the whole feast. And you can already feel where this is going. This is a bunch of youngsters just getting ready to make a rampage in the kitchen and all of the fun and giggles and shenanigans that come with it. This is a very short story, but it is very cozy. It is all about family and coming together and feasting together and having a good time. I would definitely recommend this to you if you're a fan of Little Women. I would definitely recommend this to you if you are a fan of sending Hallmark cards. I would not go near this book if you're not looking for something sappy and cozy and heartwarming with all of the frills and details that you can possibly imagine. An Old-Fashioned Thanksgiving by Louisa May Alcott. And then our third cozy book is The Ghost Cat by Alex Howard. It is early morning 1902, Edinburgh, and Grimalkin the cat is laying in front of the fire. What he doesn't know is that this is his last day and he becomes a ghost cat. And we follow him the next 120 years or so when he has to stay near the house that he died in and he sees everything around him change. It has a touch of historical fiction, it has a touch of magical realism, but first and foremost, it is a very agreeable, cozy read. I would definitely recommend this one to you if you're a fan of cats, and I would definitely go for it if you liked books and stories like A Cat Who Saved Books. Again, I would stay away from this one if you're looking for a lot of plot. Again, I would stay away from it if you're a dog person. The Ghost Cat by Alex Howard. And do I even have to do Dark Academia? I mean, there is something about Dark Academia books that absolutely screams reading in fall. And you know these ones, I'm not even going to review them. The Secret History, Babel, If We Were Villains, Dead Poets Society. All books steeped deeply in a gloomy, grey autumn melancholy. You either love them or you're a summer person. Then let's do some classics, and of course, the quintessential classic that you should absolutely reread every fall is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now, both Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula are again typical books that go well with autumn. They have that delicious gothic undertone, that dark, sinister atmosphere, that beautiful poetical writing, and questions like, who is the real monster here? I would recommend these to you if you love monsters. I would definitely go for these if you love strange, misty landscapes and very gloomy cityscapes, then these are for you. I would stay away from them if you are a bubbly, happy person. I would not go near them if you're easily afraid of shadows, and I would definitely stay away from them if you value your sanity. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula, ideal for autumn. And in that same vein, let's talk Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know what it is about the internet and social media today, but we definitely do not see enough Edgar Allan Poe. And there is lots to unpack here. There are short stories, there are poems, there are larger novels. He has everything. It is spooky, it is atmospherical, it is gloomy, it is maddening, it is chef's kiss. I would definitely recommend his writing to anyone who has had or is still having their gothic phase. I would definitely recommend this one to you if one of the major colors in your wardrobe is black, and I would definitely recommend these ones to you if your ideal pet is a raven. Do run away though if you hate existential dread and graveyards and gargoyles and a very depressing atmosphere. Edgar Allan Poe, we need a resurgence. And then for something totally different and less spooky, less gloomy, but ever so autumnal, I would go for A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. A Movable Feast is basically the memoirs, the diaries of Hemingway while he was living in Paris as an unknown writer, and he just spends his day writing in cafes and meeting with friends and visiting bookshops. And it is a very lovely and heartwarming and almost unlike Hemingway kind of story. And it is Paris in fall, with its rainy streets and its cafes and the sounds that you can hear outside of the window. And it is ever so lovely. And to illustrate that this book is an ideal autumn book, I will leave you with a quote. You expected to be sad in the fall. Part of you died each year when the leaves fell from the trees and their branches were bare against the wind and the cold, wintry light. But you knew that there would always be the spring, as you knew that the river would flow again after it was frozen. When the cold rains kept on and killed the spring, it was though as if a young person died for no reason. This book yearns for spring, while wholly embracing autumn. I would recommend this one to you if you have never read any Ernest Hemingway. I would absolutely recommend it if you have. I would stay away from it though if you're not a fan of diary style books or of biographies, and I would definitely stay away from it if you're perhaps not a Hemingway fan. A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. And then, let's just do it, romance. And for romance and autumn, I would go for The Anatomy Duology by Dana Schwartz. Now, this is a mix of historical fiction, perhaps fantasy, alternate fiction, and a love story. We meet Hazel Sinnott, a young woman living in 19th century Edinburgh, and she wants to be a surgeon. Now, being a woman, she is of course forbidden to go to university and study to be a surgeon, so she employs a resurrection man. A grave robber. Now Jack, this young grave robber, will indeed steal bodies for her so she can learn and practice, but he has problems of his own. There are strange men skulking about the cemeteries at night, and a lot of his friends have simply vanished. And from there on we get a gothic romance tale with mysteries, a touch of the occult, and it is actually a really enjoyable story. I would definitely recommend this one to you if you want your romance stories to have a bit more plot body. I would absolutely go for this one if you love historical fiction, if you love the setting of Edinburgh in the 19th century, and if you love that Victorian science theme. I would stay away from it though if you are actually looking for some historical fiction. I would stay away from it if you are allergic to strong female heroines, and I would definitely not go near it if you're not invested to read both of the books. Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. Now this list is far from finished. If I want this one to be the ultimate list of autumnal reads, then I need your help. Just go into the comments and add some of your favorite all-time fall reads, and do go through the comments of the others. And if you see books that you've read yourself and loved, do like those posts and do leave a comment. That way, with all of your help, we can compile the ultimate autumnal reading list. In the meantime, I will thank you for watching. Here is a video I think you might enjoy as well, and I will see you next week.